I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Let me turn my camera on. There we go. I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Today's Friday, and Friday is the day we do the Healing Circle in association with our colleagues at the African American Child Wellness Institute. And we have a team of great people that are focusing on the question of mental health in our community. We have the opportunity today for a special guest presentation momentarily with the senator from Minnesota, Tina Smith. We expect her to join us in a few minutes. But our topic today is lonely, but not alone, how to connect despite the challenges of COVID-19. And think about it, it's a challenge for all of us. And we've been moved to a point of introspection because we've had our lifestyle disrupted.
But what's going on is it's not.
So we want to talk about that. Now, somebody's trying to log in, I think. Dr. B. Dr. B is there. How are you, Dr. B? Another announcement that I want to make is that this week we've made a connection with our national organization, the National Newspaper Publishers Association, and we'll be streaming our programs every day live to the Black Press of America at Black Press USA NNPA. And that's a wonderful thing. It's a major achievement. It reflects the interest that our national organization has in the work that we're doing here, and also reflects an opportunity to broaden this conversation to the audience of Black people in America. NNPA, National Newspaper Publishers Association, consists of over 200 Black newspapers nationwide, and we represent the ability to bring the voice of 30 million African American people in this country to the table, a voice of power, and a voice of unity, and as a voice of consequence. So we are pleased to be connected through NNPA. Of course, we're also streaming locally through YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, and subscribe to the channel. And we also are sharing this across our Facebook pages at Facebook for Insight News and Facebook for Al McFarlane. Finally, what you can do is like us on any of those platforms and start a watch party or share this so that people know that this conversation is happening right now and that they need to be a part of it. We're waiting for the connection with Senator Tina Smith, but in the meantime, I want to ask our guest from Ohio to weigh in again and welcome Brother Marcus Bentley, who was with us for the past 2 weeks. Marcus, good to see you again. How are you?
Great to see you as well. How's everyone doing?
We're all doing well and glad that you can join us again. Marcus Bentley is the leader of an organization that serves youth in the Akron, Ohio area. The organization, and he's a dean of education for a school group. Talk about your organizations, if you would, Marcus.
Well, the Edge Academy is a charter here in Akron, Ohio. We use a behavioral leadership program called, it's affiliated with Love and Logic, where we spend a lot of time building up the kids and teaching emotional intelligence through that as well. Lava Athletics was founded in 2016. We do mental health using sports as a platform to teach social skills. So, those are some of the things we're doing now, even during the outbreak.
Great. And Dr. Bravada Garrett Akinsanya is our leader in this project, my partner and co-conspirator, bringing this regular weekly program to you. Dr. B, how are you? First of all, thank you for being here. And you're muted. And let me ask Kelvin to make sure you're watching for the joining of the program by Senator Smith, Senator Tina Smith.
Okay, I was going to say I'm very excited about being here. I love this project. It's a great use of our energies to inform and inspire our African American brothers and sisters and our allies from other BIPOC and white communities that support our own wellness. So being a part of this panel and this project of taking the word forward about healing, about our right to be well, beyond COVID, beyond racism, our innate right to claim our wellness, our innate right to heal our communities in a way that is culturally congruent and in a way that empowers us as our own personal and collective helpers. We know a lot of people come to our communities with a savior complex that they're going to come and rescue us. And what we need is people to leave us alone or give us funding to help us rescue ourselves. So this project is about the Swahili word kujichagulia, self-determination. And that's what I love about being a liberation psychologist. And that's what I love about having a group of people like you, Mr. McFarlane, whose whole life mission is to give voice and speak truth to power. So I'm glad to be here, and I love this panel. It's awesome.
Well, let me ask you to introduce the topic of today, and if we get the link with the Senator, we'll just morph into that and keep it going. The idea, and we're pleased that she's trying to connect with us right now, was to get a debriefing on the issues we talk about every week, how we keep connected, how do we voice our opinions, how do we engage in civic accountability and responsibility, how do we move our nation and our state and our families forward. And the topic that you've set for today, alone but not lonely, cultural strategies to promote collectivism, is an important topic, collectivism and connection in the age of COVID-19. And let me ask you, Dr. B, to set that up, and then we'll ask the colleagues on the team to weigh in. And as I said, we'll be expecting Senator Smith momentarily as well.
Well, thank you so much for that opportunity. So the vision and I guess the core meaning
of purpose. Let me pass the talking stick to you, and you can explain the talking stick concept. Okay.
Yep. I received the stick, and I thank you for it. And in the way of our ancestors, I want to honor our elders who have given us permission to talk. I want to honor our ancestors on whose shoulders we stand. And that each of us, as we sit here, I see not just you, but the multiple generations of the embodiment of hopes and dreams that our foremothers and fathers had for us. So we honor the ancestors, and we honor them because they're close to God. I also call on a reuniting and recommitment to our recognition of our indigenous brothers and sisters on whose land we live and thrive and grow, who kept it and nurtured it as gifts from the Creator. So as we begin the talking stick, we remember to be in circle. Although physically we don't look like a circle, but spiritually we are in a circle. And each person in the circle has equal access to the center, which is the place of power. No matter who you are, the circle gives you voice. So in honor of that circle and that process, today's conversation is about being alone but not being lonely. There's an icon saying that is, I am because we are, and we are because I am. So we exist within the context of others. That is our sole purpose, is to be members of a greater collective. And so today, when we talk about COVID, which has restricted our natural movements within our community, our natural movement of how we handle grief, We know when we traditionally have grieved, your whole house is filled with friends and neighbors bringing food and pouring libation and holding you. And even when you thought you were alone, coming anytime, day or night, to provide support so you never have to suffer or even celebrate alone. So today, this circle is talking about our unique strength and abilities to heal in spite of conditions around us and what that African-centered healness means. So that's what I open the discussion with today.
Wonderful. You pass the stick back to me if you would.
Oh, here's the stick. You've got
All
the
right.
stick, Brother Al.
Thank you, Dr. B. And I see our special guest is here. And Tina, what we were just doing is opening and setting the groundwork for today's conversation. As Dr. B mentioned, our discussion today is around mental health and the health of our family, our community, and of our nation. And the working theme is alone but not lonely, cultural strategies that promote collectivism and connection in the age of COVID-19. Well, we are so pleased, Senator Tina Smith, that you could join this program even for a few minutes today. And we look forward to just your take on the theme any way you want to, but in the context of the work you do on behalf of the people of Minnesota and the people of America, and in light of these tremendously weighty things we're all experiencing right now, the trial, the verdict in the Derek Chauvin trial, how that brings back all the feelings associated with the murder of George Floyd. And then there is the Brooklyn Center issue, right? Where another young man lost his life. And then we've been watching the national news and seeing this story repeat itself, variations on a theme again and again and again. You're doing things legislatively at the national level that impact some of these concerns. So I'm going to pass the talking stick to you, and thank you and welcome you to be here.
Well, thank you so much, Al, and I'm honored to hold the talking stick with all of you. I really appreciate it. And I was I was sort of backstage virtually for a while and had a chance to hear a little bit of the conversation and what Dr. Garrett Akinsanya was saying. And I want to just play off of a few of those things, touch on a few of those things. The first is this issue of isolation and loneliness that you're talking about. This is a challenge that is endemic in our society, and that I think that COVID has made so much worse. I think particularly of our elders who have been in many ways so cut off. And, you know, there is a lot of social science research which shows that loneliness is how bad loneliness is for us, for our mental health, and also for our physical health, the connection there. And then I think about what happens when you layer on that loneliness and isolation with the kind of historical trauma that people experience, Black and brown people, Indigenous people experience because of the centuries of history of being devalued. And so that kind of all is colliding right now in this moment where it's in some ways it's almost overwhelming. And I was just thinking about how when I was talking to people over the last couple of weeks, so many people were expressing to me this combination of fear around the Chauvin trial, that we wouldn't see a turning, we wouldn't see accountability, and also hope that we would see accountability, not justice, because there can't be justice in this one particular, only this one verdict, but some sense of turning in terms of accountability. So, you know, that leads me to the work that I do in Washington, which is to do everything I can to expand the opportunities for more accountability, especially through the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, to make it possible to do something systemically about this epidemic of violence from law enforcement directed at Black people and brown people and all people of color. And I am optimistic. I think sometimes you have to be optimistic, right? In order to accomplish change, you have to believe that it's possible. And I want to just touch on one more thing as the conversation goes on, which is that I also heard what Dr. B was saying about solutions coming in from the power centers up above and outside of the community, and sort of saying, oh, here I am and I'm here to help you, rather than building on the solutions, community-based solutions. And I think that is going to be so important as we figure out how to build out of this pandemic into something that is sustainably going to be addressing the deep inequities in our community around housing and economic opportunity and food and health.
Senator, thank you so much. I've often said, this is an Al McFarlane quote, they get the money, we get the misery. What do you mean, Al McFarlane? That too often white people get the money to admire, to study, to manage the misery of Black people. In fact, Black misery is a growth industry for white people in America. And so I'm saying that to express my hope and my belief that things have changed and are changing. I like the direction our president has taken in declaring bold and intentional investment in the Black community, in marginalized communities, and acknowledging the genius that our communities bring to the table. That acknowledgement including ensuring that there is a capital or a fund investment into the solutions that we are generating. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, first, I hear what you're saying. There is almost there can be almost a voyeuristic, not looking at and being, for white people to see that Black pain. And it's that in itself is almost kind of continues to add to the trauma, right? And what you have to be able to look at the assets and the strength in community, and then you have to be able to say, this is not for me. I'm not going to share power. You have the power. I need to make sure that you have together. It's like the whole relationship, the whole power relationship needs to be flipped on its head. I mean, I think fundamentally that's what this discussion around equity means that we are having if we follow it through to its complete conclusion. Here's just an example of that. I am really proud to be working with Senator Cory Booker on the Justice for Black Farmers Act. This is saying, yes, we need to address the systemic racism within the U.S. Department of Agriculture. But really what we have to do is we have to figure out how to get land into the hands of Black farmers and farmers of color so that they can be in charge. They can be owners. And to me, that's one example of how this thinking of the white people that are in power has to shift. And even just the words, even just the language sharing power or giving power communicates in its own way the imbalance in our systems and how it needs to change.
Senator Tina Smith, thank you so much. I know you've got a tight schedule, but it's so welcome to have you here. We're so glad to have you here. We welcome you anytime. Thank you so much.
I love to be with you. Thanks to all of you.
Okay, take care. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane, our Friday edition. This is the Healing Circle. And again, my thanks to Senator Tina Smith here of Minnesota, reporting on a federal viewpoint and a local viewpoint about the things that we deal with every day in community. Again, I want to remind people that we've expanded our reach in this conversation in that we are connected to the national Facebook page of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, NNPA. The website is Black Press USA NNPA. So that's one more place to connect. And what's important and beautiful about that is that it brings this discussion that we have done locally here and in our region to communities just like ours all over the country. So we're glad for that. I'm going to also now introduce two other special people on the call, and then we'll ask both Tanaya and the uh, other team members from, trying to read here, Zoe from the uh, African American uh, Child Wellness Institute to weigh in. But I want to introduce a person we haven't met before, and that's Yvonne Webb. I don't know, is it Dr. Webb or
No.
Yvonne Webb? I know you're an esteemed journalist in Ohio, and I've heard about you, but it's glad to meet you, and I want to welcome you. And I want to also acknowledge my colleague and friend, Brenda Lyle Gray, who writes the stories from these events for Insight News. Yvonne Webb, how are you? And let me just ask you to introduce yourself and your work and how this topic is ruminating in your mind as we speak.
Hi, I'm Yvonne Webb. I am a former newspaper editor with the Akron Beacon Journal here in Ohio. I 37 years. I worked with the Beacon Journal as a reporter, copy editor, features editor, metro editor. I've done it all. Most of my career was spent with Knight Ridder when the Beacon Journal was part of Knight Ridder, one of the newspapers that Knight Ridder owned. Knight Ridder was the second largest media corporation in newspapers as far as the U.S. goes until its demise. I'm thinking about this topic, and I don't know. My major concern is what's going to happen to our nation, to us after the pandemic. I mean, where do we go from here, and how is this going to affect education, economics, just everything? I'm so fearful. I'm fearful because I go to the grocery store and I see that prices are rising, and and based on the past, I know that they'll never come down again. If they do, it won't be much. I see the gas is going up. I see that the housing here in Ohio and Akron was always a pretty stable economic climate as far as housing went. But now I see prices of housing, the cost of new homes just skyrocketing, and that concerns me. What does that mean for people like me, for young people? I don't know. This pandemic. You speak of loneliness, but I'm just concerned about what this is going to do or what it's doing to our economy and our future. That's what I'm thinking about when you talk about this topic.
Thank you. Let me go to Zoe. Zoe, just in contemplating today's theme and listening to Sister Yvonne Webb and what the senator had to say in the opening remarks of Dr. B, what ought we be thinking about in this question of alone but not lonely? And how do we individually come to an understanding, a place of being able to be functional, right? Despite all the distractions and the pressure that we may be experiencing. And how do we, navigate those questions just raised by Yvonne Webb?
Well, I think we start to navigate some of that stuff by getting honest with ourselves that we're struggling. We're seeing these things, like Ms. Webb said, that prices are rising, housing is changing. We're feeling some fear. We're feeling some angst, and then kind of settling in and going, let me talk to my community. What are you guys seeing? What are you guys feeling? Where can we go with this? How can we support each other? How can we, despite our fears, keep moving forward and not get ourselves into deeper and darker pits of disparity? The way we get through all of this is definitely by coming together and realizing we are not alone. Despite feeling alone, we do have community out there, but we have to open ourselves up to being willing to kind of take the risk to do that and to say, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z. And if that person can't be supported, then going to another person. We have to be a little bit vulnerable with each other and with ourselves to admit that we can't handle it all. That's kind of where we start.
Zoe, let me ask you to pass the talking stick to Tananya Hurd. But before you do, take a 2 minutes and talk about you, about Zoe. Let our listeners and new viewers know from whence you speak, your training, and your passion for this field of counseling.
Yes. So my name is Zoe Severson, and I have a background in nursing as an LPN. I then went on and got my master's in counseling psychology, and I've now been practicing as a licensed professional counselor, is the technical term, or mental health specialist, for about 2 years. I have a passion for our community, being specifically North Minneapolis. I grew up there. That's my home. That's always kind of been my home base, and have a lot of family connections there. And I want to see our community rise up and not be pulled down by the things that we're going through right now. I really want us to say no more of this. We can't keep doing this. We can't keep hurting each other. And if I hurt you, then I'm hurting myself as well, and really getting that and understanding that. So that's kind of my passion and where I come from. I work a lot with trauma. So I'm seeing the people that have been hurt on a daily basis, and how if they're hurting, then that next person is hurting, and then the other person is hurting, and how we need to really work on bringing everyone together and saying, look, if I'm hurting you, like I said, then I'm hurting myself, and really understanding that. So trauma is a main thing. I also work a lot with biracial men and women, young and old, working through the issues of being biracial in specifically Minnesota. So that's kind of me passing the talking stick to Nanya.
Thank you, Zoe. I believe also that this in this era, as Sister Webb said, that it has promoted a lot of fear in our community, and now is the time to ask the hard questions. As Zoe said, we, without asking the hard questions, without coming together in this type of setting or a similar type setting, since we, in this past year, we haven't been able to gather together physically. I think that it's very important to try to come together however we can to, as like I said, as always said, ask these hard questions. What's happening? What we have to look at our behavior since this pandemic. As you know, even though we've been on lockdown, so to speak, there have been, a lot of different behaviors. And as a result of this pandemic and everything that is associated with it, we as a Black community, we're used to gathering together. That's just that's our culture. We gather, we come together, we talk. So this has had some devastating effects on our culture specifically. Just asking the questions and really coming together however we can in this day and age of the virus is really, really important. And I'll pass the talking stick back to you, Mr. McFarlane.
Well, thank you. Before you do, same question, give people a sense of your story and how you come to the work, because I think it's a great story. I've heard it, at least parts of it, but I think telling the story, what we are as storytellers, and there's healing in the stories we tell. So give a sense of how you come to this work and what drives you personally, what passion brings you to serving in this arena.
Okay, thank you. I will. I actually am a widow. I got married at 16 and was widowed by age 29. I lost 2 children in nonviolent. It wasn't violent deaths, but I lost 2 children, and I came to become an author and also a peer wellness coach. So just coming into the community, because during those times when I lost my husband, I was alone. It didn't have anything to do with COVID, but I felt alone, and I had to find several villages to help me get through just for my children growing up. So I gravitated to the nonprofit world, and just knowing that I could be a help to someone was actually very healing for me. So that's what kept me in this arena, is because if I don't feel like at the end of the day I'm helping even one person, what's it for? And that's really what keeps me going every day in my grief and my trauma. So that to me was the catalyst to have me jump into the nonprofit world and just continue on my own and in my business as a peer wellness coach for people with different traumas. And I enjoy it, but it's also a healing thing for me.
I'm going to take the talking stick back, and I want to go back to Yvonne Webb. Sister Webb, thank you again for being here, and I want to really acknowledge and applaud you for your stellar career in journalism with the Daily, right? The Daily newspaper there in Akron, and that kind of longevity and staying power is no little thing. It's nothing to it's not a little accomplishment. It's a big deal. It really is. And it gives you a unique perspective, vantage point from which to analyze and comment about the relationship between the Black community and the white world. And part of the conversation I had with the senator was this notion of how do we empower, enable, and fund the genius in the Black community in a way that we can lay a claim to the public treasure. The public treasure is created by our investment, our tax dollars, our presence, and too often the solutions funded by the public institutions don't come from us, but work on us, and they provide businesses and incomes for others. How does that look? If that's a fair statement to make from me, I'm asking you to respond to how that sounds, and if there's any observations you can make from your vantage point as a journalist editor in the Akron community.
Akron is unique. Akron, it's unique. We're a former rubber town, so rubber was like the big employer here in Akron, both with Firestone and Goodyear and B.F. Goodrich, and that brought prosperity to Blacks here in Akron, mid-century, last century is what I'm talking about. But now, all that's changed. The factories closed, a lot of unemployment, a lot of poverty here in Akron, and that has affected, how Akron sees itself and Akron's position in the community, Akron's position in the world, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I don't know that we've recovered from that 90s economic downturn that the city took. I'm not quite sure that we've recovered from that, and because of that lack of bounce back, that the pandemic, like I said, is just like its effect on the Black community in Akron. I think is just huge and frightening. Again, and I don't really know how we come back from that. I'm hoping we have some pretty strong Black leaders here in Akron, though, which is a positive thing. We have council people both at the city level, the county level, and the state level, state representatives and senators that are trying to address this issue. But Akron itself, take for instance, we have a huge minority infants death mortality rate here in Akron. In fact, one of the zip codes, which is predominantly a Black zip code in Akron, has the highest infant mortality rate in the state. And we've been dealing with this issue for at least a decade, but so far there's been no solutions. I mean, we have not corrected that. We're trying to address it, but it's not been corrected, and that will affect the future of Akron. That does affect the future of Akron. We just got one good thing about the future of Akron. We just hired the school system just hired a new female Black superintendent, who I'm hoping to see good things from. She is a product of Akron Schools herself, and so she's in a unique position to understand, the issues within Akron's education system. And I'm looking, like I said, I'm looking forward to her doing some good things in the city. I just, my prayers are with her, because she has a huge task ahead of her. Being that Akron is one of the larger urban systems in Ohio, she has a huge task ahead of her. I don't know all these issues, like I said, they just give me some hope, but I'm also fearful for the future. I don't know that. I'm not sure about and I say this as some hesitation, but I'm just not sure about the ability or the sincerity of our white leaders to address these issues and to help us, solve these issues. That's a big problem. They've given a lot of lip service to it, but again, like I said, we have the highest infant mortality rate. That by itself just concerns me, and I don't see how the pandemic is going to help that. It hasn't, and I just don't. I fear for what the numbers will say, at the end of this year, or that's right. So I pass the talking stick back to you.
Thank you. Let me pass the talking stick back to Dr. B. So Dr. B, you and I and our communities have had this discussion about disparities for a long time. And what my sense is, and you can correct me or build on this, is that one of the consequences of the George Floyd murder and the Derek Chauvin trial, but the murder in particular, is that it focused the attention of not only this community, but the world on the weight of the institution on the neck of Black people. We had a chance to see it in its raw, naked ugliness. And the act itself was a metaphor for our experience. And the act shows that the atrocity and the trauma that existed at the beginning of our experience here and continues to today still can be depicted and is depicted in this act of violence of the 9 minutes and 30 seconds metaphor for our relationship with the power. The trial perhaps is metaphor for our resurrection and reconnecting and overcoming. What do you think, Dr. B, given Sister Webb's analysis? I'm hearing her being cautiously optimistic, hopeful that things can change and improve, but really, really aware of the structural and cultural barriers to movement. What do you think, Dr. B?
I concur with Sister Yvonne about especially about the infant mortality, which is our future, and the fact that the Invisibility Syndrome, which is one of the microaggressive practices that has been unleashed on us for hundreds of years. We go to a store, they don't see us in line. We're in the hospital, they don't hear our bells ringing for the nurse's station. And y'all are feeling me. So that invisibility of this phenomena of women, Black women, not just losing babies, but actually losing their lives. That was totally unheard of women dying in childbirth like they are now. And regardless of a Black woman's social economic status, she's equally at risk as a sister living in poverty. So somewhere there's medical neglect. Somewhere there are physicians who actually don't see us. And when they do see us, they don't understand us. And if they do understand, they don't care. So we're going down this ladder of marginalization, inhumanity. And so when I think about the volume being turned up by the George Floyd case, I keep saying, it was like suddenly white people couldn't avoid it. You know, the denial and the privilege that they've had for centuries of not understanding our plight. It was overtaken by the fact that the whole world saw it. And I don't even know if white folks in America could be jarred, because I thought it would happen at Columbine. I thought I knew things would change with Sandy Hook, and yet they did not. So there's some psychological mental acrobatics with holding on to the status quo. And so the ability to be cautiously optimistic is, I think that's even good, that you can even hold any degree of optimism. Because in the book, y'all know Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson, page 17, he writes, they asked us to cooperate with white folks. But what happens? They get the money, so they get to do the operating, and we get to do the coing. And so part of the thing is the construct that we started out early with Kuji Chagalia and self-determination. How do we look at healing ourselves? How do we look at having opportunities to? And I heard I'm gonna interrupt myself and saying I heard Senator Smith talking about sometimes sharing means something different. But if there is actually a sharing of power, it's like the sharing of power in this circle. That's what true sharing of power looks like. And that means all children are everybody's children. Whether they're red, yellow, black, or white, they're precious in your sight. They're all children. And the minute everybody says all children are theirs, we won't be having sisters dying, having babies. We won't be having babies that don't have somebody to look after them. We won't have cousin Shanae who's on drugs, and everybody knows she is, who doesn't have somebody to feed her and take her children when we know she's high and too high to care for them. We won't have that. So I think I'm going to put that question back out. Is it a difference between somebody letting you alone, leaving you alone, and letting you have self-determination? So I'm going to throw that question out. And I think I'm going to hit Sister Lily with that. What's that mean, young person? For some, because y'all are always, young people are often, not always, often saying, leave me alone. Leave me alone. Let me make my own decision. So when we are talking, I'm just bringing the truth. So when we're talking about something like this, where we're talking about our own deaths, our own mortality, our own angst, our own depression, and kids, may have even thought about suicide, that are cutting, and things like that we see among young people. Should we let them alone? Or what do you think, in your professional opinion, as a young woman, what do you think we should do?
That's a good question. I don't think leaving them alone is the right answer. They're pushing back so much because of not only society, but also of what they're feeling inside and what their peers are doing as well. And it's just a ripple effect. And I've had people that I've known that are my age that have committed suicide. And my stepbrother, he passed away from gun violence. And so it's a lot. I think leaving alone, like I said, isn't the right option in this moment. I feel like it's a state of knowing what's going on, maybe talking to someone else. They're not going to talk to, their parent first. They're going to talk to their peers because that's the first thing that they think of. That's the first person that they can actually connect with, to be like, even, that's their mom. She literally birthed them, but they feel a more broader and, you know, strong connection with their peers, and that's why they do push away at first. But then you always see at the end that they come together more, or that if the parent is pushing in and, hey, let's talk about it. If you need time, tell me what you need. What can I do to help you? If I can do this, I will. If you need a mile, I'll give you a mile. It's like, but there's, respect towards it as well. And for me as a young person, knowing all the mortality rates and the birth rates of, mothers and children, especially in the Black community, how there's, more abortion clinics, and they're building more as well, in Black communities other than white communities. It's upsetting to hear, but it makes me feel more accomplished and more, I don't know how to say it, feeling more strong, because I am a child and or a teenager that was, I'm here, and so I'm going to push that with as much as I got. And I'm going to speak my truth, even if it could be wrong. That's what I'm here today for, to listen to everyone. And, I'm still learning. You always are learning continuously. And so getting that, and also knowing that I could make something better, not just now, but in my future as well. So that's what I take from that.
And that's why I handed you the talking stick, because I knew something would come out of your mouth that was worth hearing all the time. So who would you like to pass it to? Whom would you like to pass the talking stick now?
I'll pass it to Miss Brenda.
Yes.
Excuse me, because I was writing notes, but when I thought about the topic of aloneness, it's something I've suffered with all my life. And that's because I'm an only child and I had a limited extended family. But I think what was important with the way Al and I grew up and in our Santa Fe neighborhood, Santa Fe Place neighborhood, it was the neighborhood where Blacks could buy property. And I think I mentioned this to Al. We had each other, and we had great teachers and good leaders in the community. And my parents had 8th grade educations, but they were community builders. And they were self-taught, and they didn't let this bother them. My father made 46 cents an hour, and every time he crossed the bridge to North Kansas City, he was arrested. And I lost my siblings behind racism because my mother struggled to have children. And so he was very bitter. So it was like this aloneness just followed me. When I traveled, my parents couldn't understand my arrogance, but there was no one to get on the rides with me. So there I was, like crying at the World's Fair, and I should have appreciated it, but it was that aloneness that was haunting me. That's how I started writing, in the back of my father's Buicks. Characters at 7 and 8 years old in my Big Chief tablets. But I, thanks to the boss man, gave me an opportunity in my winter season to use that talent. So I think my thought on the subject for today, and I'll have to write about it, is that we have to be very cognizant about the people around us. I'm 74 years old, but I occupy my days in gratitude. And when you look at 580,000 people that are gone, we have no excuse, reason, or anything. Number one, not to be grateful. And number two, not to help a child, because our kids are hurting and our Black kids are hurting. And I'm going to pass this to Marcus because I so admire, and Marcus, I love your website. It's powerful. The words on it are powerful. They need to be emulated in other districts and other community centers, but I have to give my hat to Minneapolis. I've been writing about your city since August, and I've never met more powerful people. That Al Flowers and that Alfred Babington Johnson, they blow my mind every time I write about them. So I'm grateful to just be with the people here. Of course, I'm the president of Dr. B's fan club. And Lily, my last word, I am so proud of you. I was on the front line at 16. I think Al remembers 47th and Broadway at the Pooch's restaurant, and the Jewish people would bring us sandwiches and coffee when we switched times. And I was with the Panther Party, but made for sure that you didn't take my picture because my father would have, I don't think I would be able to come back outside. So I had to tell the people, you know, power to the people, but don't take my picture because you don't know Eugene Lyle. So anyway, I'm going to pass the stick to Marcus. And I just want you to know I so admire your work. 37 years as a curriculum coordinator and a classroom teacher of African American Studies and International Baccalaureate. I didn't want to teach, but God had a different plan for me. But He gave me Al McFarlane in the winter of my life. So I'm really, really grateful. So I'm passing it to you, Marcus.
I'll take the stick. You guys have been making so many great points, and I've just been taking notes. Kind of rewind a little bit. When we're talking about infant mortality in our area, Dr. Lodge is our mental health coordinator. She was on last week, and Ms. Bruce Webb, Yvonne, is actually on our board. But she highlighted, which I didn't know, that the kids are born strong in the hospital, and they're going home. The infant mortality, the deaths are taking place once they get home. So that those situations are based on the institutionalized racism, of course, but also some of our behavior patterns that are systematically passed down traditionally and miseducation. So that's just one point that I wanted to make. And the optimism. I keep hearing the word optimism, and that's vital when we're battling against fear. When we sometimes our emotions cloud the reality that we do have what we need. We're not alone as far as our communities. When we stick together, you see how we pour into the streets. And like-minded people, we're not alone as far as our ancestors and our faith and trust in our spirituality and our God. So a lot of times in the media, oftentimes and through European thought, it's this ideal that we don't have enough, and we're not coming from a creative aspect, which is Kumba, creativity. So if we're creating opportunities and we're using our creative genius and thought, there's more than enough resources, there's more than enough land. But with this fear that in our world and in our industries, and because of social engineering, we don't think it's enough, but it's more than enough. But what we have to do is hold a lot of people accountable. So there has to be a cadence of accountability. We have millions. There's more churches on corners than there are liquor stores. So you'll buy into the fact that, oh, it's liquor stores and abortion centers everywhere. But when I go around, I see a lot of churches, man, big and small. How are we linking together and changing how those churches view mental health? You can't pray out some of these mental health issues. It's not going to go that way. So they're not implementing and applying those necessary. They may need to hire mental health specialists in the church to attack therapists in the church, caseworkers in the church. And those deacons and those lay members should take on some of those roles, because there's more than enough space and opportunity. I ride by empty buildings and empty churches all week that should be loaded up, not with just your church folk that attend there, but crack those doors open to those buildings, and we have those centers right in our communities, and we can win these battles. So I'm very optimistic and look on how to look at things. There's a saying that goes, there was two individuals that went out and they were marketers, and their boss sent them out to this place in Africa. And it was like, well, one guy said, well, there's no business here if they don't wear any shoes, right? And the other guy was like, well, we have an opportunity to place shoes on their feet. There's a lot of business here. So we have to start changing how we look at and break down what we actually have. We're not alone. We have the resources. We have the knowledge. I'm looking at the panel, all this information and power. Just imagine if we, like you said, duplicate the platforms and the formats, and hold each other accountable. When you open up an African-American store, if it's trashy and they ain't doing their job, we got to jump on them about that. If you hiring contractors that's African-American and they doing that Rudy Poot work, we got to hold them accountable and check them like, man, we're giving you these opportunities. The space is here. There's ears open now for our white counterparts. They're ready to listen to us. I have people coming up to me all the time. That sound, that volume was turned up, and it has opened their ears. So we really have to take the opportunity to take hold of our opportunities and creativity that we have. We got everything we need. I'll pass this to Dr. B.
Let me ask before you pass to Dr. B. I just had a deja vu moment, and I'm asking you to explain what I'm experiencing now. It's almost as if I've had this conversation with Marcus before on this panel before. And that speaks to the power of what you're saying, Marcus. But I just wanted to say that as we are speaking right now, it's almost as like I've been here before and had this conversation before. Pass the stick to Dr. B and explain what I'm feeling, Dr. B, and respond if you would. Unmute.
Okay, so I was going to say thank you again, Marcus, for just, as you always do, bringing the energy and the passion to the conversation. That truly, I don't mean to say it, but it's in a Black man kind of way. Because we have our own way as Black women, but you bring it in a Black man kind of way. And I think that what excuse me, I'm hearing is that you're speaking the truth, and that's why. Al, you're gonna take over.
Okay, yeah, right, great. Well, while you organize there, Dr. B, I want to acknowledge a note that came from Sister Shirley LaChapelle, just a reminder that there is COVID-19 vaccine from 3 to 7 coming up at May 10th for a first dose and second dose June 7th, people 18 and above. The location is the Living Word Church and World Outreach Ministries on 3255 Spring Street Northeast. Registration's required, and call them to sign up for that. And I think this is a project that she's working with the Health Fair 11 project and Living Word Church involved, also Hennepin Health and UCare. And if you have questions, if you want to get vaccinated, call this number, 651-644-6929, 651-644-6929. And before we close, if others have announcements or events that we're participating in or promoting, we can do that as well. So Dr. B, go ahead.
Basically, I was writing the number down. So basically, as I was saying, the reason it sounds so familiar is because it's the truth.
Mhm.
And the truth always repeats itself, as do lies. But the truth rings and it sticks with us. Lies don't. That's why it's not good to do them, because you can't remember what you said. So so Brother Marcus was speaking a truth that I've heard you say many, many times, and maybe
Mhm.
that's why it's deja vu. And I know that when a brother comes in a brother kind of way, that it rings true, and it supersedes generation. It supersedes even condition. What you just said, Brother Marcus, is that having Kuumba, that construct that says we're creative, that aspect that makes us survive, because every generation and every group has survived because they had Kuumba. They had that capacity to make ways out of no way. They had that, whether it's a Minnesotan eating lutefisk and figuring out how to freeze and keep their food over the winter, or it's a black woman making a pot of greens out of squatters' greens, or with ham hocks, or whatever was thrown away that wasn't supposed to be any good, and making hoe cakes in the field. Whatever that is that we've learned to survive, that required creativity. Y'all remember that show MacGyver? When he used to take anything and fix stuff. Well, my dad was doing MacGyver with with what's it with that tape, that gray tape y'all use. I forgot the
Duct
name of
tape.
it. Yeah, duct tape and wires and Prince Albert cans, fixing holes with all kinds of concoctions. So what I know is that we as a group of people, we've been doing MacGyver before MacGyver existed. So with that, if I can, I would like to pass it to my sister Zoe, who is a kind of a MacGyver up in her work. So she takes what she's got and makes it something new. So let me hand it to you, and we got to get to Nanya, because I know she can throw something in after that. But
So
go
we've got
ahead.
about 2 minutes each, and
Okay.
then we close the program. But go ahead, Zoe, and then to Nanya.
So what am I supposed to be talking about exactly? Just
How
about
you do MacGyver with your
how I do
clients?
MacGyver with my clients? Well, I take my clients from wherever they're at, and we kind of reframe things if they're a negative mind frame, and see how we can look at it from different perspectives. We work with, I do a lot of stuff with drawing and looking at different images. I do a lot of mindfulness and doing some deep breathing, and just really working with whatever the client brings. I kind of work with and make it so it's individual to them, so that they can feel like they're getting somewhere, and they can feel that we're connecting and that they have some control back in their lives.
And to Nanya, you got the talking stick, and you'll pass it to Al.
And similarly, I find wherever I am, what is it that I need? It's like Brother Marcus said, everything that we need individually, we already have within ourselves. It's really about finding what it is. And like Zoe said, if there's negative self-talk, what is the opposite of that? And that's how I work with my peers as well, to find the opposite of whatever they're feeling. If they're feeling any type of negative, okay, what's the opposite of that? What can we do about that? If you don't know, what have you been doing, and why is that not working? So that's really how I come at things in my life, as well as with my peers. Is if it's not working, why is it not working? Let's find something different. And I'll pass it back to you, Brother Al.
Well, what a wonderful discussion. This has been a great program. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Sister Yvonne Webb from Akron. Thank you, Brother Marcus Bentley from Akron, Ohio. Thank you, Brenda Lyle Gray on my team and Lily Rankin on my team. Thank you, Zoe, and thank you to Nanye. And obviously, my great thanks to you, Dr. B. We keep doing great work, and I think we simply keep pressing on. Thanks to Senator Tina Smith for being here. And we'll see you all next week. Take care.
Take care.
At the Healing
Thank you.
Circle. Bye.
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 Oh, Queen Justice, where are you? Did they beat you up or no? Lock you on the ground, take the crown away from you?
Oh, Lady Liberty, red, white, and blue. Did they take your dignity with their bigotry? Teach you that you're born to lose.
Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough.
We've had enough
Of all the rules you break,
We've had enough
of all the money you make.
We've had enough
No more life gets taken.
We've had enough.
This is a proclamation.
It's been 400 years and we're 400 late. Together we stand from state to state. Going back in time won't make America great. We need justice now, people won't wait.
Action, no more distraction. Every step we take, we gain traction. If it can happen to one, it can happen to all. United we stand, divided we fall. Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough.
We've had enough
Of all the rules you were breaking.
We've had enough
Of all the money you were making.
We've had enough
No more life gets taken.
We've had enough
This is a proclamation. Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. You better believe, just roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough.
We've had enough of all the rules you're breaking. We've had enough all the money you're making.
We've had enough.
No more life gets taken.
We've had enough.
This is the